2015, and online gaming has been around for quite a while now. We've had a lot of fun with hundreds, even thousands of online games, but in such a competitive world, only the strong survive and stick with us for a decade or even more. Now, while there's plenty of new games being released every single month, some players really just won't trade the classics for anything in the world. And which classics, some of you ask? Well, here's something of a history lesson for those who weren't into online gaming several years ago.
FreeMMOstation.com.
Number 10.
We didn't want this top to be filled with top to bottom with just MMOs. So we're going to begin with a shooter that sucked so many hours of our lives, much more than it's probably healthy to do. That's S4 League. This game tried to play the stylish card, and we have to admit that it kind of worked. It was doing parkour and awesome moves before Warframe was even imagined, and virtual reality competition is something that fans of Sword Art Online could easily relate to. This was such a smooth and exciting shooter that was all made the better by the cool visuals and emphasis on teamwork.
Number 9.
There's no way around it. Among all the MMO fighting games ever released, Dungeon Fighter Online is one of the most treasured, bringing back memories of classic brawlers such as Double Dragon, Golden Axe, or Final Fight. It's been around for a decade, and while Nexon decided to shut down the North American version in 2013, developer Maple brought it back in 2015 due to high demand by players who missed punching enemies in the face in the glorious 2D. Sure, it's not as easy to enter nowadays as it was when it launched in North America in 2009, and it can even feel primitive to some players used to more up-to-date productions. But if you give it some time, you may end up loving it. If the retro visuals aren't your thing, then the tons of different classes and massive content will probably keep you playing for a long time.
Number 8.
We're still a little bit baffled at the lack of proper wizardry MMORPGs with all the potential that the theme has and a huge crowd that is somewhere out there desperate for a decent MMO to quench their Harry Potter thirst. With 50 million registered players by the end of 2014, Wizard 101 is a fun and harmless game for kids with plenty of safety options to keep them safe, with colorful cartoon graphics that still look pretty decent today, and a turn-based combat system that uses collectible cards way before online collectible card games were the shit as they are in 2015. Wizard 101 has earned its place as a classic in our heart and computer. But if pirates are more your thing, then there's a sister game called Pirate 101.
Number 7.
It's not like we're spoilt with great MMO games based on popular franchises. That was just one more point in favor of The Lord of the Rings Online, but in the end, it was the sheer quality of this game that turned it into a classic. This is Middle-earth done right, and while it still failed to surpass World of Warcraft as many have mistakenly gambled on, it is still shown that great literature can be turned into quality games when developed with passion. Recent news about the server merges aren't too surprising, as most games need at some point to regroup their population, but this doesn't mean that the game is dying at all.
Number 6.
12 years and counting. MapleStory is the game that made side-scrolling MMOs popular, and while others have tried to continue to do so, most of them fail, and it's highly unlikely that any of them will ever come close to the 100 million registered players of this game. This, however, isn't a game just for kids, despite its cartoon look and so cute I could die characters. It's a brutal game about building your character through a lot of playtime and grinding, and it won't hold your hand and take you on a ride, as most MMOs sadly do nowadays. You'll have to spend a lot of time, ask for help from other players, and hope they'll point you in the right direction, and on to the most fun bits of the game. This is a classic in its own right, like it or not, and the sequel is already out in Korea and taking risks that seem to be paying off.
Number 5.
Pulling off an MMORPG from Dungeons & Dragons Online is probably something to give some serious headaches to any studio out there. However, Turbine rose to the challenge and released an awesome game, one that wasn't shy on complexity and yet managed to somewhat please fans of the original work, as well as players who weren't particularly interested in the tabletop game. Be warned though, if you're a player who likes his eye candy, this game was a bit rough around the edges visually when it was released and hasn't aged too well, so this is one of those who like depth, not exactly the face value beauty.
Number 4.
First of all, let's spare a moment for Ragnarok Online 2, a sequel so generic that when it looks in the mirror, it's World of Warcraft that looks back. But moving on. Or actually, back. It's impossible to forget Ragnarok Online, one of the first big MMORPGs that's still played nowadays, and while it's not as in-depth as some more recent MMOs, it offers so much to do that you'll either love it or just hate it. If you're gonna try this one for the first time, arm yourself with plenty of patience, or a friend that can help you along the way, or you can always wait for Tree of Savior, which is a spiritual sequel to Ragnarok Online, and was designed by the same creator, Hakiyu Kim.
Number 3.
Mabinogi is a colossal sandbox MMORPG, and one that, oddly enough, after over a decade still has an idea or two that we haven't seen well implemented in other MMOs. For example, the way that characters actually grow older is something that other games should probably take notice of, as it does have some influence in how the game unfolds, albeit very slight. Mabinogi, though, has dozens of skills and activities to keep you entertained, from composing music, to cooking, fishing, or even designing clothes. Combat also tried something different for the time, with a focus on timing and counterattacks. Mabinogi is extremely feature-rich, and the focus on socializing is one that made it a true gem. The prequel, Mabinogi Heroes, known in the West as Vindictus, trails a completely different path. More of a punch in your face and kick in the groin kind of approach, but it's also a great game.
Number 2.
Widely known as that game that was recognized by the Guinness World Records, RuneScape launched in 2001, and while it has over 200 million accounts, the actual numbers are far from what they used to be. Nevertheless, RuneScape is still going after so many years, and there's even an old school server for those who aren't too keen on the largest updates. While touted as a free-to-play MMORPG, RuneScape has plenty of locked areas accessible only to those who purchase a subscription. The world is 3 times larger than what a free player can explore, and there are other extras, such as more quests, minigames, and only as a member, you get to design your own house, or become a harbor master. It's not the only MMO with limitations, but locking most of the world sounds a bit extreme.
And number 1.
Now, what can we say about EverQuest, an MMORPG that launched in 1999 and is still alive and kicking? Yeah, well, we can add that it's probably the game that shaped up the future of MMOs, and without it, World of Warcraft wouldn't have existed, or would look at least very different from what it was when it launched in 2004. With EverQuest, Sony Online Entertainment, bless its soul, went all 3D and paved the way for all other games, at least in the genre. Running for 16 years and still being supported by Daybreak Game Company, with 21 expansions and a future where updates called campaigns will keep on bringing new stuff to the game. It's unlikely that EverQuest Next is going to change anything for the original game due to the very clear differences between them, so we're betting that EverQuest is going to stick around for a few more years. Whenever the time comes to call it quits, we're pretty sure that many players, just like us, will give it a heartfelt salute. And that was our trip to the past, which, incidentally, is also the present day for many of us who still play these games from time to time. We left a few games out, of course, but in the end it all amounts to a matter of taste. So let us know in the comments if you would prefer to see some other games on this list maybe. And until next time.
Still not sick and tired of all the MOBAs yet? Good for you, because the developers of Heroes of Middleearth has just announced another one, Strike. This is another free-to-play MOBA, and the studio expects the 2 games to compete between